the Anfield Wrap with Neil Atkinson, Paul Senior, David Lynch and Rob Gutmann. We are here today to talk about basically Liverpool's next 4, maybe even next 5 might come into the shake-up. Liverpool against Newcastle, Napoli, Chelsea and MK Dons. The managers talked of changes in these forthcoming games. I'm going to ask each of these gentlemen to pick a team, start doing it in your own mind as well for each of those 4 games, and imagine Liverpool getting their way through it. We're not going to do the goalkeeper, it all depends upon fitness. And then we're going to have a little chat about the trademark discussion, which is rumbling on, but we probably won't come to that until towards the very end of the show. We are going to start off with what is exciting, and what is exciting is the fact that Liverpool are going to play again, Paul, and that they're going to get themselves into the meat of the season, really. This is where the manager began to make 1 or 2 changes last season. What are you expecting this?
It's nice. Firstly, nice to be looking forward to football at the weekend again. The amount of Anfield Wrap contributors texted me over the weekend saying, "What are you doing with your weekend? Because I am bored." Do you fancy a pint or something? Because this is just not right. I'm looking forward. Looking forward to the game. It's obviously, because things are so good at Liverpool at the moment, it's always nice to watch them first and foremost, and they are worth looking forward to. The games on the horizon are for very interesting ones. All different tasks. A sort of team fighting for relegation, a team that we struggled against last year, someone that you would say is a rival in Chelsea, and then an opportunity to rotate MK Dons. So four different challenges, and I don't think, we were just talking off air briefly about what we'd all do, and I think we're all in reasonably different boats. So I was saying that I would go very strong versus Newcastle, and you're saying I'm mad. So
I'm not saying you're mad. I'm just I think the manager may end up agreeing with you, and I think that we can do this sort of stuff. And what I always imagine with this, in fact, I'll go to David on this, is that they have these sorts of conversations in Melwood, but ultimately, as the football match gets closer and closer, the manager gets more and more conservative and thinks, I just need to go with my boys because I just need to get a result. In exactly the same way, going back historically, the number of times you've watched a manager make a load of changes for a game and then basically get Gerrard on as quickly as possible, because as soon as you're actually playing the match, you're desperate to win the match because that's the competitive instinct, and I think that's what we see here. But right now, it wouldn't surprise me if there are conversations in Melwood around how do we manage everyone's legs, not just for this run of games, but with an eye on how fit we want them to be in January and February, because that's where it didn't work last season.
But then obviously, of course, as well, you could have the team written out for Newcastle on the board in Melwood, but then it's best laid plans, isn't it? Someone comes back from the international break, got an injury, someone's not looking that good in training, someone's a little bit off it. So then, you probably do get more conservative as it gets closer, I think. But equally for this one, I just think he will have in the back of his mind, particularly this first one against Newcastle, when else do you make changes if it's not for this, for 12:30 at home against Newcastle, a team that are probably not going to be up there this season? When else do you give the likes of Shaqiri his game?
We'll come on to the specifics in a minute, Rob. I want to talk about last season in that it's practically perfect in every way. Liverpool put a phenomenal run in, and in December, I remember we went to Wolves, and the Liverpool manager came out afterwards and he said, if it takes 105 points, we can get 105 points. Liverpool's fitness around the time of Leicester at home, West Ham away, you can argue another couple of games possibly in February. Liverpool's fitness begins to dwindle, I think, a little bit. It comes back strong. They have the use of the breaks. They create almost a mini winter break for themselves. But it is worth pointing out that if there's an area to improve upon last season, it's how fit lads are, not in December, but how fit they are in January and February.
Yeah, I don't know if that narrative is correct to do with fitness. I mean, Leicester...
They were fucked.
Yeah, but Leicester comes after they've had a big break. It's rhythm as much as fit. I mean, Leicester's a weird one because of it's the snow and hail. I agree. It looks like we've got no moves in a phase of the game where you wanted us to go up again. It's easy to say that can be fitness, but that can also be psychological. They are. I mean, Leicester comes after a decent break. He's taking them on warm weather training.
Yeah.
They should have been buoyant, but there's always the risk that they're knocked out of rhythm. And I think the problem we've had in the last 2 or 3 Januaries is the being knocked out of rhythm. I think it's no accident in those December runs. It's happened the last 2 seasons, hasn't it? Into the Christmas phase, we've done pretty well.
But I think that's because he points the entire fitness plan at be as good as you can in December. I genuinely think if you watch them, I think they peak through into December, and then there is a natural and understandable fall off because we put all of our eggs towards this run, which we've decided is really important. Now we haven't got the luxury of that, in that January becomes, all right, there's fewer games, and that's maybe the difference, but January is as important as December, as is February, because Manchester City are going to get 100 points.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a no points dropping scenario, so it's... I don't know the sign. We're speculating about science, which is really, really hard to gauge because, you say it feels to me a little bit too idiosyncratic to sort of glean that by resting at a certain stage we got maximum fitness in December. It waned off in late Jan, Feb, but then came back in spades in April. I don't know if you can calibrate it quite like that. I think the general point that you have to find time to rest legs is there, and I think doing that without knocking players out of rhythm is the greater test.
But what I think, Rob, is that you go back and for instance, I think the breaks that they have in January and then in February help them ensure effectively they're going to be fit for the latter part of the season.
You could be right.
My point is that I think that adds to the argument of this is a season round thing, that this isn't just the idea of you get one big break in and then it gets fixed again. You're like a mini little season pre-season. I think it's the idea that for us in this English football and what we've got to deal with, I think they've got to be on this all the way through the season. I'm sure they already are. I just wonder if they may be a little bit more rotation-y now than they were last season.
I think so. The squad's that bit bigger. There's important players back fit. Chamberlain and hopefully eventually Keita. I think there's a Brewster potentially coming back into the mix. There's players reborn to a degree like Origi. I think there is more of I actually think what the latter stage of last season showed in some pivotal games, Newcastle away, the Barcelona game, and the final winning of the Champions League, that the squad was able to get Liverpool over the line as much as a first 11. And it was a really important contribution from the squad. And I think he will look to use the squad more gratuitously than he did before. And that's why I'm more although I can go with the conservative one, which is Champions League final team, just fucking beat Newcastle and get that out of the way. I do get the parallel idea that this is one to maybe give Shaqiri a game, maybe one to drop Fabinho out and bring Oxlade-Chamberlain in. I don't know.
I think the concern and that is that if everyone treats Newcastle that way, they're going to give someone the bloody nose, and we've had evidence of that already with what happened to Tottenham. My bigger picture look at this is obviously is the strength of the Champions League qualifying group, and that's what's different this year to last, is that I'm sure he feels like he can treat Genk and Salzburg almost like League Cup games, whereas last year with Paris Saint-Germain, Napoli
got beaten Belgrade,
and of course he gets beaten Belgrade. Belgrade just seems a harder place to go as well. You talk the pictures you see of Belgrade with the flares and everything. It was never going to be a battle of laughs. Where this, I'm not trying to really diminish the opponents we've got this year, but it seems a more qualification in the Champions League seems a more straightforward task. So
I'm
Napoli
really
away,
looking forward to the bloody nose that Salzburg is going to give Paul Senior. They run, Paul. They really run.
I understand that, but Liverpool,
they love running.
Liverpool have won pretty much every game since March.
Oh yeah,
and are playing the best football of pretty much any Premier League team
I
ever.
agree with you. But I'm Mo Salah.
So
I'm Mo Salah, Paul, and I don't want you to rest me against Genk and Salzburg because I want to be top scorer in the Champions League. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, but he certainly doesn't want you to.
He doesn't speak like that.
Well, I'm just saying.
He
doesn't chat to Paul Senior either, Dave. If we really want to get realistic, and maybe he would start speaking like that if you talk to Paul Senior more often. Go on.
He wants to be the Golden Boot winner again as well, and I'm sure that's equally as important to him.
I think he wants to play every game.
Does he not want to win the Premier League more?
No, so I think he wants to win every. I think that. So, for instance, I think that Salah wants to play every game. So I think your question is how. So I think, in amongst all of this, your question is as much how do you look after Salah and let him hit his ambitions? How do you get other people to do his running for him? Do you change the system occasionally so he plays in a different position? Do you look after him via subbing him? As much as the idea of, I think you can explain to Mo Salah the League Cup's the League Cup. I don't think you can say to Mo Salah Champions League group games are the League Cup. I think that's where he says, no mate, I'm happy to miss out against MK Dons, but I'm playing against Genk.
Yeah, understandable, but what did you enjoy more last year? Your 2 goals against, I don't know, fucking Belgrade, or do you want to play in the Champions League final again?
Yeah.
So the way to be ready for that, Mo, is that you don't play against Genk, you don't play against Salzburg, but we know that Manchester City are running at 99 points on average for the last 2 years. So we need you, Mo, to be playing 38 games in the Premier League, plus the ones where it suits us in the Champions League.
It gets much easier to leave him out of any Champions League game as well if Liverpool just get it sorted in the first 4.
Yeah,
leaving him out those final 2 is much easier if they're already qualified and he sees the benefit of that.
So off the back of that, we're going to come on to do it all. Literally, I'm going to get you to go game by game in a minute. But David, this is one of my things as to why I think that Napoli is arguably as if not more significant. I think that Napoli, if Liverpool could get off to a flyer, which would be not getting beat, it wouldn't even necessarily be winning the game, but if Liverpool could get off to a group flyer, there would be nothing, that's why I wonder if we might see a stronger side against Napoli than we may elsewhere.
Yeah, 100%. I think Napoli will look at and say Champions League final team, because I don't. If you win that, you've set yourself up to win the group really, really early, and the effect that has on then your Premier League title charge and everything else, and making your changes at MK Dons and all this talk about trophies, and I think there's so much value in 3 points there that he will go as strong as possible.
I think we know there was. So it's so easy to go two very distinct directions on this, and I don't envy the manager on it to a degree. I think it was a case that we got knocked out of our stride in the because of the Champions League at this stage last season. Okay, we got Paris Saint-Germain out of the way, but then I think it's our second game we go to Napoli and get beat. We then follow that up. We're not long after with the Red Star one. Also, quite frankly, actually, I'll throw the League Cup into the mix as well. Even though it was a half first team, half reserve team, we got beat there, and I think it got us out of that winning habit. And you see us dropping points. I know that there are mitigations because we go to Chelsea and drop points. We drop points with home at Arsenal and the City games in the mix. Liverpool quietly only win 2 in about 9 in that spell, and a lot of it's to do with this phase of not being sure how to treat cup games. I think to a degree. So the manager's got to weigh up that knowledge in his mind. And I don't think he overly rotated them, but he did have to rotate. He's got to weigh that up in his mind with degree of saying, do I keep the blinkers on for now and keep going strong? And as Paul suggested with Newcastle, maybe that's a case in point.
Are we not talking about rotation, though, in just 3 positions? Because we've been talking for a while about, he's obviously had a midfield recently, but one way you can make the odd change, like Oxlade-Chamberlain stands out in the Southampton game. Is it not? Are we only talking about Mane, Salah and Firmino? I mean, he starts Sturridge versus Paris Saint-Germain last year.
Although that's only because of
Firmino's eye injury, isn't it? But what the point is that we're strong enough to get away with it. If Divock Origi goes and plays through the middle in Naples, then surely we're fine there. Are we not? I think Joe Gomez plays most of the Champions League group games last season. So if you're going to make a change where you felt, okay, Matip's out, for the Champions League games because we're going to play Gomez. The thing with this Liverpool team, and I'm not trying to be a conversation killer in terms of the whole show, is that you can make changes without it be like in the past where you make 2 changes, you go, fucking hell, we made 2 changes. We don't look like Liverpool anymore. Now we can make changes and it's seamless.
But then that's where we get into the conversation about, surely you make those changes against Newcastle. I'd rather see Divock Origi leading the line against Newcastle than in Naples, which is, by far your hardest Champions League fixture and the hardest fixture you've got in that 7-day run. I just think you can, but the thing is, you can't afford to get it wrong in the Premier League, where you can afford to get it wrong in the Champions League group. You'll get away with more in them 6 games than you will with Manchester City on your tail, and that's my point really, is that. You can tell me that Salzburg are going to tell me to fuck off. If Liverpool turn up and play well, they beat Salzburg.
Oh, they do. My point is it won't be easy. I think that they'll leg you.
Yeah, but I mean, you could go to Napoli and play the first 11 anyway and get beat. Yep. We've seen that. Whereas the risk is you drop points in the Premier League and still go to Napoli and get beat. And that is why I would be more inclined to rotate in the groups than in the league. That's what's going through the manager's head, I suspect, Rob. But I think it's a perfectly valid point from Paul. Yeah. It's perfectly valid.
Perfectly valid. You know what? And if you ask me to bet here and now, I think I'd just in a Brexit like 51 to 49, just about plump for saying the manager will go with the Champions League team. But I think he will genuinely wrestle with what the right thing to do is in this circumstance. And you are right, we can afford mistakes in the cup competitions. And also the pressure's a little bit more off in the cup competitions because of that. So I think you make 1 or 2 changes, you bring Origi in, you play with a bit more freedom. I mean, we go to Porto last year and start with Origi away. Okay, we all shit and we haul him off, but no damage is done. We're already romping because we don't need. He's only 1 of 11 players. But I can see with Newcastle, if we had a slow, stuttering, knocked out of our rhythm start and we're 2 or 3 lads changed, after half an hour, 45 minutes, everyone's getting a bit nervy and going, make half-time substitutions, Jurgen, right? And I'm playing devil's advocate to a position I can go against either way. So it's not... I know you're... Oh, go on. You say what you're going to say.
I just don't think this Liverpool team's like that. At Anfield, say you make 2 or 3 changes for Newcastle. Newcastle turn up, don't have any chances because Liverpool are solid these days. and it's, at worst it's 0-0 after 60, and you've got Salah on the bench.
As part of that though, David, it's worth saying who's where. I don't think you do have Salah on the bench against Newcastle, because I think Mane and Salah haven't gone away on international duty. So I think, just to go through this, Mane and Salah have been here and are fully fit as far as we know. Keita is here but is recovering from injury. Shaqiri didn't go away on international duty. Milner's been here as well. I think that covers, broadly speaking, everyone. Matip doesn't go away on international duty, so he stays in the
Lallana.
He stays here. Lallana will have been here as well. And it does get to a bit of a point where, if you are, and it might be that the manager doesn't like the order of games and he will end up playing safe, but there is a bit of a point, a bit of a conclusion here, Rob, where if you are Shaqiri and you are Lallana and you aren't playing Newcastle at home, you're getting to the sort of point, the crux, where you can say, well, when am I playing? Because I don't expect to play away at Chelsea. I don't expect to get away at Chelsea. I don't expect to get away at Napoli. Is it really just MK Dons? And I think that becomes a bit of a conversation as well.
I do think he has to bear. I mean, his main duty is to the winning, right? And fuck the consequences. Well, not fuck the consequences, but those other considerations are slightly secondary. Having said that, I think the point about Salah and Mane not playing over international weekend means it's actually imperative they play against Newcastle, because otherwise you can knock them out of rhythm. So I think when we're talking about rotation, I don't think we're talking about rotation to those two so that's not even an issue. Firmino is a genuine possibility because...
And Fabinho.
But Fabinho may not have played minutes, but yes, he will have travelled.
The expectation is he will play.
Yeah, I mean, Klopp was forced to play the Brazilians in bygone years, when they're putting them on planes with Man City players and arriving 2 hours or having half a night's sleep before the game.
Which you'd still imagine has happened.
Yeah, but I think this time, I think there is this. Whilst Paul, I think I'm wavering all over the show here, changing my mind.
I'm really enjoying it
every 5 seconds.
I hope you like the listener.
I'm like the guy in the Fast Show, who went with every last sentence he heard. I suppose I'm going to find a really narrow halfway house, a really narrow compromise, which says I think he could make just the one change, and it could be Bobby Firmino.
That's what I feel.
And Bobby Firmino, you'd appease the squad by bringing Origi in. It's a reasonable change you've made before without causing major disruption. And Salah and Mane are fit. Or maybe it might even be Origi. Shaqiri could make the nod and Salah go inside. But one of those key squad boys gets honoured. And I think that could be the compromise between all the positions.
And that's exactly how I feel. I think the only two question marks in my mind are around the two lads who are with Brazil, because they're almost the two easiest to change. For Newcastle. So Firmino, it's an easy sell internally because he's been playing minutes in the west coast of America, and then Fabinho, you probably got to give a break anyway. Newcastle at home is one where your shielding midfielder isn't quite as required to add. You can drop Henderson in, you can play Milner, you can bring Oxlade-Chamberlain in and play Henderson in the 6. I think that's the easy one to do, and then they're both fit and firing for Napoli. The only thing I would err on the side of caution is that them two are probably arguably our best players so far this season. So there's that consideration that the two that have travelled furthest are maybe the most integral.
I think he changed the shape.
This is where possibly we'll see a 4-2-3-1 coming back. I've just written that down. So you read my notes, Neil.
I think he plays 4-2-3-1 against Newcastle.
We've got another thing I can change my mind to.
And I think anyway. I think he'll want to do a lot of what he did last season. I think he'll want to give Salah games at number 9, and I think that 4-2-3-1 lets him do that a lot easier than the 4-3-3. I think he'll...
So Shaq comes in wide right, Mane left.
Possibly Mane left, possibly Mane in behind Salah, and get the pair of them close together through the middle of the pitch. I think if he's going to rest Fabinho, you can make a strong argument that he goes with 2 to sit and hold in midfield and sort of changes it that way. I think at some point he'll want to start putting doubt in opposition coaches' minds as to what is the formation going to be, rather than just you set up for 4-3-3 against Liverpool. He does it around this time last season, and I even think that I don't think he necessarily will do it, but if I was him, I would be looking at Andy Robertson and going, when don't I play you ever? And the answer is Newcastle at home at this sort of phase, after he's had 2 international games for Scotland, could be one of them as well. And therefore, if you were to change to a 4-2-3-1, there's less onus on whoever it is who ends up at left back as well, and it makes it a little easier there as well for him. But I think this will be what's in his mind. I'm not saying he'll do it, and then what opens up is the idea of who plays centre mid in the 2, and at that point it could be almost anybody.
Well, Henderson and Wijnaldum would be natural.
But I think he'd have loved it if he felt Keita would be fit, because I think he's where he'd like to see Keita in a 2 in a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
And then go from there. Have you got something similar down there, David, in a countdown note-esque manner?
I'll show my
show
working.
Show you working, yeah.
No, I'd basically just written down 4-2-3-1. And it's the perfect opportunity to get Shaqiri back in as well.
And to play 4 forwards. 4-2-3-1 lets him play 4 attackers and not 3. It lets him play 4 forwards, and Newcastle is a game to do that.
Yeah, and I don't understand where Shaqiri not going on Switzerland duty. Why would he do that unless this is in the offing?
Because you'd want rhythm for him, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd say, please play for Switzerland.
So there must have been some sort of promise made or suggestion that, and Shaqiri doesn't seem to work as well in that 4-3-3, and was part of the reason he was practically bombed out the back half of last season. So I think the 4-2-3-1 and then the Salah being up top is the perfect opportunity to rest Firmino coming back from Brazil. So yeah, I think that's the way he's going to go.
My position's still not changed. All these possibilities.
So you think he rests Firmino and plays who, number 9? Mane?
No, he said not Firmino.
So when did he play? Saturday?
He plays Wednesday.
He plays. It's Tuesday night. It's 4 a.m. Wednesday morning. Very late Tuesday night, you could call it.
So when's he getting back into Liverpool?
Thursday evening.
Thursday
so he does a warm down train on Friday, and that's it.
It's whether that's enough. That if that is enough, then I think he starts. I would be surprised if that is enough if he gets back Friday morning.
Just because before, though, he's played in situations like that before. He did it with the entire team, pretty much for Southampton after Chelsea.
It's not one way you probably feel he has to.
That was my point. Yeah,
with it being Newcastle at home. That for me is the only question mark around the weekends. I mean, when we go to away matches together and whatnot, we always talk about the changes in the team, and there's it's not that many very often. It's one here.
But I wonder. But it was 2 seasons ago. It was, and they went on and got to the Champions League final, but they weren't quite the same force, etc., etc. Last season, I think he changes a little less, but this season, he's already mentioned it, but I do wonder if he feels as though he's going to need to, as this is why I keep talking about January and February, that in the past what he's done is he's had them absolutely tip-top in December, but he may well need to be a little different this time out.
We know we've already lost West Ham, don't we, in terms of the December fixtures because of the World
So that's
World
getting
Cup
dropped
Cup.
into January almost certainly.
Yeah, so that will pile up, but it's I suppose there's so many wider questions around this as how is he going to treat that World Club Cup? Is he going to treat it like a little winter break and warm weather training because he likes fitting them in anyway? Obviously there's one competitive game.
2.
There's 2, but there's one,
you mean the final's the tough one, yeah.
Yeah, there's one really competitive game in that. So there's I think he'll almost have his lineups planned all the way through that. You'd imagine, but I'm struggling to just see him going past full strength for the Premier League, full stop. It's just the sort of mentality I've had around his approach to the whole season.
Do you not think that Napoli being Tuesday night impacts this? So they come back. This is my thing.
Certainly, yeah.
Because I think
Chelsea's better.
But if it's me, I'm going. So my point, Paul, my argument, and we'll see if we convince Rob, and it's the last, and then Rob listens to the last person he's spoken to, is I'd make a few changes for Newcastle, and then I'd be looking in an ideal world to go unchanged for Napoli and Chelsea, and it'd be the Champions League team, and I would be going Champions League final team. Just goes bang bang. You maybe do something with Gomez in one of them, but apart from that, I would be literally picking the 11 that starts the Champions League apart from the goalkeeper. So I'd go a couple of changes for Newcastle, a couple of changes to Napoli for the Champions League team, and then Napoli plays Chelsea, gets Milton Keynes off.
It's hard to disagree with you, but I find it hard to disagree with myself as well, just because of what I said earlier.
That you around think he's the just going to commit?
Just because of the strength of the group, and that is the Champions League group is. I can't see past that. Is that I know what you were saying earlier about do well in your first 4 and you've got the last 2 off, but you can almost treat them as well. I expect us to do well in our last 5, but the first one's the tough task. But I still feel he can beat Napoli with Oxlade-Chamberlain, Gomez, and Origi. And I think he'll feel the same as well, is that the Premier League is just such a... You do not take any risks any longer because we know that 99 points is the average for the last 2 seasons, whereas I know I can go and get 9, 10 points out of the next 5 in the Champions League and probably be all right.
I think there's 2 things I think the manager looks at. I mean, we're guessing at sports science again here. I think he judges their fitness to play in the moment. So you can look at Salah and go, he's had 2 weeks off, right? Because international break. So you play him. But then, as you said, Neil, but if you overplay him now, what's he like in February? And I think his strategy with the latter is to win games and get them off. He has hinted at that. Give them a good 70. Don't make them play 90s unnecessarily. So, this I think is how he will approach this. I think he will look who is absolutely the fittest and the best players for the job against Newcastle, right? And I think this will lead him to 10 out of the 11 on the Champions League team. And I do think I do think you've almost gone for the Champions League team semi out of superstition and out of a sense of wanting to be strong. But I think he'll go, it's the Champions League team, it's my strongest team, but my strongest team can have one change in it. Yeah. That doesn't make it not my strongest team. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not as literal as we sometimes talk about it as being. So I think he makes the one change.
So what do you think is the one change he makes for Newcastle?
I think the Firmino one. I think Firmino drops out, and I couldn't tell you. And I think I'm going to talk myself into plumping for Shaqiri because
does he change the shape? Because he's never, apart from Barcelona at home, he's never played Shaqiri in a 4-3-3.
He does by Barcelona. That's a pretty good.
Or he plays him in midfield.
Okay, I'm not even going to go that far on that one. But he could play. He can mix that up anyway with how he does Shaqiri in a 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. He can adapt that. So he might change the shape for that. The midweek afterwards, I think Salah and Mane will be asked to play all 3 games, and then they'll be told you've got the entire week off of the MK Dons ones. So that's when I think he's going, I am using the 2 weeks they've had off to have the luxury of being able to say to those boys, 3 together.
I'm playing them in all 3. I'm just playing a 4-4-2 against Newcastle.
Okay, possibly. Systems I think almost come secondary to the personnel in a certain sense. He wants the best players out there. Bobby Firmino gets rested 1 game. I don't think there'd be a huge amount of variation in those first 3, if truth be told.
Okay, then David, what are you picking?
So, obviously Adrian in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold right back, Matip, Van Dijk, Milner at left back. Because I think, as you pointed out, where else would he get that game at left back? Central midfield 2 of Jordan Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum. 3 of from on the left, Sadio Mane, Oxlade-Chamberlain in the middle, Shaqiri, and then Salah up top.
Paul?
That's a lot of changes, that actually, isn't it?
That's a lot of changes. I like it, but it's a lot of changes.
Champions League final team. Obviously, the goalkeeper is different. I'm just going to go Gomez for Matip. That's what I think Firmino plays.
Even though Matip's been around for 2 weeks doing nothing, twiddling his thumbs.
Joe Gomez needs games, and I think he definitely plays the next 2, and that's my thinking.
You think Matip definitely plays the next 2?
Yeah, I think Matip definitely plays the next 2. So Gomez for this because he needs games, and that's it. That's my change.
I think Gomez plays for England, and I think Klopp settles himself on that, and he maybe brings him in for Napoli. I think he's going to make.
I think there's every chance Gomez starts Napoli.
Yeah, so do I. I think Klopp's main thing is he'll take the mentality that we've said about not wanting to wanting to put a strong team out. So I was thinking he'll settle himself to 2 changes, but where they are is anybody's guess. I could be persuaded on that Robertson-Milner one very, very easily. I'm going to guess that Firmino is the one near certainty of change for me, but I couldn't tell you if it's Origi or Shaqiri come in, and I think there could be one other change.
That's the reason I wonder if that's not the case is because you can't pick it. I think he has the same dilemma. So I wonder whether he just finds a way to go with Firmino for 60 and get the game won.
Maybe, but he's a good ace to have up your sleeve as well. If you're not going well, we've seen him have an impact.
Different level of impact as a substitute. Obviously, we talked about PSG earlier. I think that's his only real impact as a substitute. I think he struggles.
Porto away, he makes a big difference.
I think he likes a 45-minute shout for me. I think he likes to come on.
And the Super Cup recently, by the way.
Yeah,
you just had me off there.
Sorry.
No. He was
historically a poor substitute.
He was terrible at Goodison.
Yeah. Historically a poor substitute.
What a relief.
I mean, he wasn't the worst substitute at Goodison. That will always be James Milner, who came on at Goodison. And I'd love to. But if I ever got to interview James Milner again, I would just do 15 minutes on, no, but lads, how bad were you?
Was it Fulham as well, Milner? Absolutely. Just
that's when he comes on, wallops it, and puts us in the situation and gets us in trouble, but then he does score the pen.
Yes. Yeah.
So, fair play to him on that one. But Goodison was a sight to behold. I genuinely think he will want, at some point, to lay down his 4-4-2 that he used to play at Dortmund. And And I think he may feel he's closer than ever to having the personnel to do it. And I think it may well be that Shaqiri and Oxlade-Chamberlain play wide, and he goes with Mane and Salah through the middle, and has this idea that he plays that little box 4-2-4 that he used to enjoy playing at Dortmund, did a little bit of last season. I think we will see that at some point from him this season. Whether or not it's Newcastle, I don't know, but if I'm him, I want to get it in as soon as possible. Just so, for instance, the feedback to Carlo Ancelotti for Tuesday night is he did just go 4-4-2 or 4-2-4, Carlo. Really? I think that he needs to start to sort of drop that in a little bit, even if it only comes out every now and again. And I also think that at some sort of point he's got to find a way to play Xherdan Shaqiri, because if not, he's taking the piss. Even though he's not my favourite footballer in the world, there is some sort of point where he is he's Switzerland's best player, for fuck's sake. He should kick a ball for Liverpool every now and again.
There's a lot of Premier League clubs he'd be their best player.
Yeah.
Everton.
Napoli away. Are we all saying he goes Champions League final team?
Yeah.
Broadly.
Yeah, I am.
But that, again, if he doesn't do Gomez for Saturday, then I would agree with it that he definitely does it in the week.
Did Gomez play at Napoli away last season?
Yeah, he plays most of the Champions League
particularly well as well at right back.
Yeah, I think he may do so. I think he may have a little look at not wanting to basically do Trent for 3 consecutive 90s at the stage of the campaign.
Plays for England as well.
Yeah, I mean, Trent gets 30.
Didn't play last weekend,
he's playing
did he?
This one now.
Yeah, he'll start against Kosovo. Yeah.
I think like last season, Trent gets 38 all comps. So I think in our heads we've got like 38 starts, not 38 appearances. In our heads, because the second half of the season the side really settled down. The first half of the season, and Trent plays his best football in the second half of the season. The first half of the season he doesn't play quite as regularly. So I think it may well be one where he'll have an eye on. He may decide that he wants Trent to be at home against Newcastle, which would make sense. He wants Trent to be away against Chelsea, so Napoli might be the one he settles on. And I think the same thing, he'd be trying to do the same thing for Robertson. It's just he might not be able to do it at this phase, or feel he can.
I mean, it's nice that we've got options. That's the one way to look at it. We're literally having the show around the fact that we can make changes and we don't look so much weaker on the back of it. I'm floating the idea of Gomez playing this one, but it's not that I'm saying let's play Gomez because we're playing a bottom 4 or 5 side. It's let's play Gomez because we've got Joe Gomez, but he can also go and play against Napoli, and you would imagine the transition seamless.
I reckon he might rest Henderson for Napoli.
Henderson?
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised.
We can always talk ourselves into the odd change.
No,
I think you're wrong.
Important. I mean, Henderson got 30. Henderson only started 30 games last season.
Yeah.
Fabinho started 29. I expect him to increase that. Milner started 31. I expect him to possibly decrease that, but you never know.
Yeah.
And Wijnaldum started 43. But we all know that Wijnaldum went off the boil a little bit towards the second half. More. So I genuinely, I think the idea of he'll definitely play Henderson. I think he might not. I think there's every chance.
Do you play Wijnaldum till he's not in form? Is that what you're saying? Because
I don't know.
We've been having a lot of chat about this recently. Is that he's always the first one in people's minds that he falls out, Wijnaldum. But as you said, Henderson starts 30, Wijnaldum starts 43.
I think you play Wijnaldum possibly until you've got Keita back available, and then it becomes a little easier to rest Wijnaldum. And because I think at the minute, I think he sees that right-hand berth as between Henderson and Oxlade-Chamberlain. And the start of the season, I think Henderson will get more, but it wouldn't surprise me if second half of the season maybe Oxlade-Chamberlain comes in a little bit more than you might think around December, January, and then Henderson comes back in. I wouldn't surprise me if he does something like that. But I think that at the minute, Wijnaldum, Keita on the left-hand side, Milner doing a bit of all sorts all over the place, and different people dipping in and out for Fabinho. But I think, if you remember that Henderson only starts 30 games, then the idea he's playing all of Newcastle, Napoli and Chelsea when there are other options does to me feel a little bit like, well, that goes against the evidence of what we saw last season.
There are two distinct Henderson seasons in a way last season. I think it's before and after the positional change, and it's carried over into this season. I think he's better, more influential now, and I think it's not just the positional change. I think he made a personal decision to go up a gear, and you could see it in his performance in the Champions League final. That's not to say he doesn't require rotating and resting, but I wonder if in Klopp's mind, although he was always near the top of the pecking order, if he's just not that bit more pivotal now. But by notwithstanding that, I think we're forgetting Klopp is the biggest signifier of what will happen in this phase. He said before the Burnley game what he would do, and I think we should probably trust him at his word. And his words were, before Burnley, I won't make many, if any, changes for this. I want players in rhythm. I want consistency. Going after the international break is a totally different story. I thought it was a major hint that he'd written, as we're doing now, he'd written out these teams 2 weeks ago, and I think probably the changes we're surmising are more likely to happen than not.
David, do you think it will just be the Champions League final team against Napoli? Or, well, with the goalkeeper change and maybe Gomez dropped in somewhere?
Yeah, I just think, I know we've had different arguments about it, but I genuinely just think he'll want to just try and get 3 points on board there. It's just sets you up so nicely in both the league and the Champions League if you get 3 points there, or even a point. And also, I think he'll want to play better than they did there last season, because they were absolutely dreadful in that game. They deserved to lose it earlier than they did, to be honest. So maybe that'll be part of his thinking as well, is to sort of make a point and sort of get that game, go to Naples away and put on a good performance and win. So yeah, I think he's going to go very strong for that one. Just
to clarify, last season the midfield three for Tottenham, straight first one back was Wijnaldum, Milner, Keita. Then for Paris Saint-Germain, Henderson comes in for Keita, and then for Southampton at home, the next game, and these are similar-ish games. Liverpool then play 4-2-3-1 with Firmino in behind with Shaqiri on one flank, but it's the game where he plays Shaqiri for a half against Southampton and subs him, and he goes with Henderson and Wijnaldum in centre midfield for the game against Southampton, and that's what he does across them. So that then leads us into Chelsea. Chelsea away, Paul. Again, do you think it is the Champions League final team? Do you think he may look at doing one or two things a little differently? We have got the knowledge of playing them in the Super Cup.
Yeah, well, he's seen them so far, and he really gave us a game. So I don't think he takes any risks whatsoever. He gets his best 11 on the pitch by hook or by crook. I can't. Yeah, you've got to. That's the most important fixture for me in that lineup there. He's got to go as strong as possible.
Yeah, I think it's, you say to that team basically, obviously you'd probably disagree about what you would pick in Napoli, but in my head it's sort of say to that team, give me 2 back-to-back there, you get MK Dons off, let's get 6 points in the bag.
I think in any of these runs, the manager's going to look at the most important game, the hardest to win, and this is the hardest to win of those games, of the ones you want to win. It's the hardest to win.
It's the one. This is where I have sympathy with Paul's points around for me, Rob, for instance, a point in Napoli. If you're offering me 4 points between Napoli and Chelsea, I know exactly how I want them to be split, and I think that's where the core line is. You offer me a point in Napoli, 3 points against Chelsea. I'm not just mildly happy. I'm absolutely ecstatic.
Does that influence you making subs during the Napoli game? Then maybe
massively. Yeah, I think
more than anything else.
And I think that's one of the things that influenced him making subs during the Napoli game last season. We weaken with every substitution when we go to Napoli, and I think that you'll see the same thing this time as well.
Well, so with that, and with Chelsea being the key game in mind, as Paul says, of the teams he picks his strongest team, probably the Champions League team at this stage, and that's the first team sheet he writes down, and every other one is a work back from that situation. So how do those 11 arrive in the best condition given all prevailing factors? And that's simply, I think, will be influenced. And I can see it being, looking back over the whole spell now, I can see it being 2 changes for each game. Most of them feeling so subtle that we don't really notice, like a Milner for a Wijnaldum here, or something like that, or a Regi for a Firmino. Nothing that's going to make anybody sit up and take particular notice. But quietly, by the end of the 3, you'll go, actually, about 5 or 6 of those lads have only played 2 games in a week rather than 3 games in a week.
All comfortable then, I think, with Chelsea, and then working back from there. MK Dons, I want to throw in the idea of the one thing that sort of strikes me is where I think it can be a little harsh at times, Paul, is in this game when you do the 11 changes thing, and then we're all saying, well, Curtis Jones didn't impress me because Ryan Brewster could have done a bit more, because in that you do end up we talk about the importance of rhythm all the time, and then we throw the young players into a side that won't have a ton of rhythm. This isn't me arguing for Virgil van Dijk starting, but it may well be me arguing for Joel Matip starting as an example.
Yeah. I think what everything we spoke about in the show shows just how we can make changes, and it's not going to be so much of an issue. I mean, we played the Champions League final with 12 substitutes, so there's no reason that the 12 that were on the bench for that can't sort of make up an 11 for MK Dons, if you know what I mean. It's not important for me. MK Dons, really genuinely couldn't give a shit, and I'm sure people listen.
It's not important for you, but it's probably the most important game of Ryan Brewster's life.
Yeah, but so it's up to him to make an impression, score goals, and put us through to the next one. So the next one becomes important. I honestly think if you ask Jurgen Klopp in his heart to heart how much he gives a shit about MK Dons,
I think it's
very little. And if we weren't competing for the Premier League, and we weren't genuine, off the top, two favourites for the league and top 3-4 teams for the Champions League. You put more value on the League Cup and the FA Cup. It's a fourth competition. It's not important. It should only be used to get minutes in people's legs and see how far you can get. We could win it, and I'd be annoyed if we went strong in the final if we had Bournemouth away on as the next game. I think it's a problem for us. I can't believe that Manchester City went and won all the domestic trophies, but it's we went and won the European Cup, and that the fact that they won the domestic trophies might be the reason they weren't as strong later on against Tottenham or whatever. So no, I mean I would just about play Brewster in that game.
I think if you do go back to back in the way that we were talking about with Napoli and Chelsea, with if not the exact same strong lineup, but a similar one, then it does at least give you the opportunity to sort of guard against what you were saying, and it's just throwing a loads of kids in and making it difficult for them. There's still, you give yourself the opportunity to put some fairly senior players in with them to sort of bring some stability and not just be throwing in Brewster alongside Elliott and Jones, for example. That it's making it difficult for him if it is Henderson, Wijnaldum, Fabinho that starts Naples and Chelsea. It's James Milner, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain looking for a start. Divock Origi's ready for a start. Adam Lallana's ready for a start.
Maybe Naby Keita's. You got 4 for 3 already, and you're not even looking at
senior
kids.
Players.
Yeah.
Dejan Lovren's probably going to come in for a game there.
So you go Gomez and Lovren. I've picked this team several times over. It's not a game for the kids. I mean, 1 or 2, and then 2 or 3 on the bench. It's not about the kids. It's about the squad.
That's what
this
I was
game.
talking about the Champions League Final Four. Really, is that because we have got so many options. Like I've just pretty much built the spine of a side there. It's only a fullback. You've got a couple of questions really because we haven't replenished our fullback. But there's an argument you could run a Matip in that game, and it wouldn't be too stressful if you wanted to use Joe Gomez as a fullback and save James Milner's legs for the fixture following.
Or play him centre mid.
Or play him in centre mid. But I mean, we look well stocked there, So MK Dons isn't one where you're going to be sweating over the team. I suppose what the manager will probably be sweating in is how far he goes and how strong he has to go in the future games. Say we got City in the semis or something, then there's a real problem for him there.
He's a positive guy, Klopp, and I think he will look upon this tournament not as, I understand Paul's view, most of the shares with most fans don't give a fuck about this tournament, more as this tournament is an opportunity. And I think he will have punched the air quietly over getting a tie like the MK Dons as opposed to a Chelsea at home, where he'll think whatever team he puts out, he's going to put a team out that's never played together before and will not be in rhythm. That he has to accept before he even starts. So I don't see it's a consideration even you drop a Matip in here or Wijnaldum in there.
How much did you dread the extra 30 minutes against Chelsea the other week? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that mentality for me. It's even you guys that are reserves. It's an opportunity to get minutes in the legs now, but it might be minutes you don't want in the legs in 2 months' time. Do you know what I mean? Is as much as it does present an opportunity for us to go and win a trophy, how much are you celebrating that if the finals cushion between 2 massive games? Or
I don't think anyone's. To be honest with you, my feeling is that they won't be thinking internally about that problem now. They'll just be thinking it's a game
doesn't this lead to the problem? So like if you look at Wolves last year, the last thing we wanted was another game in the FA Cup.
The last thing we wanted was a replay. I think it is a little different in the EFL. I think it is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I think that Liverpool could have made more use of the League Cup last season and the FA Cup as well. It was just they were sort of unfortunate with the draws they got. At the end of the season, even though he's the Champions League hero, Origi ends up with around, I think it's 600 minutes. Shaqiri with about 1,000. That is nothing in comparison to what the other front three lads were doing, which is, you want to see more of them, to be honest. And these games are an opportunity to keep them in rhythm. If you do need them in case of injury, I think Liverpool needs to go further in this competition just because, we named a strong team there. We're naming a strong team here of backups. It's giving them regular games. It's keeping them happy.
But we've had this season already the Charity Shield, the Super Cup. We've got the World Club Cup. If you're gonna go far in one, you may as well go far in the FA Cup.
City benefit? They benefit a bit with likes of Jesus and Mahrez, I think, staying in rhythm despite not getting enough starts in the league. I think it did help them, and even Sane, who was playing prolifically against scoring.
But we've
goals.
already spoke about the fact that potentially Genk presents that opportunity, that the World Club Cup game, the one before the final, will present that opportunity. We've got plenty of fixtures without sweating on the league. Listen, if we win the League Cup and the FA Cup and the league and everything,
I think your League Cup problem I agree with David up until you get to the quarterfinals, and then I think we'd have a quarterfinals problem, not least for scheduling it, because the game should happen when we're away at the World Club Cup Championship. So when do we play that? Then when do we play the semi? Because that'll have a knock-on effect to when the semi gets played and sorted out. That's 2 legs. I think that the semi being 2 legs really, really makes the competition hard to put your body behind.
And this is my point.
The same for the manager. Also, the other thing I would say as well, though, is that it doesn't go to extra time anymore. It goes straight to pens. I've just double-checked.
Yeah.
It's changed that last season.
Is that in every round?
Apart from the final. The final goes to extra time. Nothing else does, which is unreasonable.
But you can see me pointing that this is it. It's when you've had that mad December. You've got your FA Cup first round at the beginning of January, and then we've been the World Club Cup. We've got to find room for West Ham, which is being rescheduled, and the League Cup.
You have a room, but whose room? It's not Mo Salah's room because he ain't playing.
But what I'd say there, though, Rob,
squad of 30.
But also, Rob, there is
18 lads in the squad.
The thing I would say as well is you've got to train them. You've got to prep them for the game fully professionally. What you can't do is say, you can't basically spend the Monday coming back after a Saturday game, and then spend the Monday before your next League Cup game going, no, we're not focusing on this, we're focusing on the league game. That's unfair.
It affects the manager and the coaching team,
and that affects the players. I mean, it does. The players are still into training. We're still talking about this stuff. We've seen what Jurgen Klopp can do with a week. And if you're Jurgen Klopp, you might be thinking, well, I might rather have the week, but then simultaneously he owes it to the players to give them the best possible chance of winning the individual games and progressing. I don't think it is an easy one, and as I say, it is week commencing the 16th of December, the quarters, and then the semi-finals is week commencing the 6th of January. So if we don't get, if we got all the way to the quarterfinals, realistically, we'd have to play the quarterfinal the week commencing the semi-final, first leg. Then we'd have to do the semi-final, first leg, I don't know when. And we probably wouldn't, it'd have a knock-on effect into February if we actually got a run in the thing.
I rest my case. You're on it's a real problem, the League Cup.
It's time. What a bastard.
But hang on a second. Man City actually used it and finished. I mean, okay, they're getting.
They didn't have the World Club Cup, Rob.
No, they didn't have that. It's only 2 games though.
It is, but it's the World Club Cup was in November. I'd feel a little bit softer about the League Cup. The fact it's when things are mad anyway. It's insane. And I want to win that.
In a sense, there's a perverse logic to this though, because you either want to win it to use the next game to give players a game, which case use those players, win it, and if they go through, you can do it again. If you get to the point whereby you think this could seriously impact on your first team squad and your plans for the season, then go out of it. But you
don't get to choose. The players still want to win.
I know.
Shaqiri's not going on the pitch thinking, fucking hell, the gaffer's told us an easy 3-2 here, make it look interesting, but cock up last 10.
Manager can take more and more risks, or different types of risks. I think it is an issue, and I think I don't disagree with the idea that it can focus the club on something that isn't important in a week. It's building towards something else. But at the same token, I think it's more of an issue in seasons where our focus is less binary. In seasons like that where in the South we face Southampton in that semi-final, but it's between that and finishing 4th, and we got to take that semi-final felt like a big semi-final because that was a trophy.
I agree with that, but literally, when do we play the game? If we get to the semi-final, when do we play the quarter-final?
Well, it's going to happen, and it's not going to, and it might. And although, notwithstanding the argument about everybody's focus in a midweek being changed, we're still going to be able to make 10 changes. Nothing stops that being an option, and I still think that could be an option. I don't know. Look, also, we're talking about as though we're going to go all the way in the domestic competitions.
And K-Dons could do us.
Yeah.
We could play really well. We could have a bit of a mare at the back. Suddenly we're 1-0 down. Penalty decision goes against us. It's 2-0. Someone laps one in from 25 yards. It's 3-0 and we're all...
Do you know the nightmare scenarios in these competitions, which we only nearly faced 2 seasons ago? We get the Blues and and Everton or Anfield... And you go, oh, Jesus, I wanted to make 10 changes. We've got to make 10 changes, but they are going to celebrate it like it's 1999. Even if we've got Curtis Jones in goal, they are going to go nuts. I mean, the only time we had that dilemma properly was beginning of January when Van Dijk made his debut. And we didn't make the changes, did we? We went first team, more or less. That would be the horns of a dilemma.
We find ourselves in the horns of a dilemma there.
Yeah, Neil. So you've got semi-final. I've looked it up.
Semi-final,
second leg. We commence on the 27th of January. That's in between Wolves away.
It's Wolves away, fourth round of the Cup if we got that, and then,
In January, you've got Tottenham away, Manchester United at home, Wolves away. I'm playing
Third and fourth
Rod Hull in goal against MK Dons.
He needs minutes.
Can't believe Rod Hull's getting a run out.
He needs minutes.
Now. And also one for the teenagers there. Well, best luck to the overseas listeners on that one.
Look it up on the YouTubes. We'll never get that back.
Indeed. All right, we've rattled right the way through the way in which they'll work. I want to have a brief chat. SOS have called for people to wear independent clothes for the match against Newcastle. It's more the idea that the trademark discussion rumbles on, David. The club haven't backtracked since the summer controversy. We find ourselves in this situation where it's just an unnecessary side plot, really, to the season. The way in which the whole thing appears to have been handled, it coming from nowhere, Liverpool not really having a PR strategy around it, maybe because people didn't even know. It does all feel a little bit like one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing, and yet we still continue on the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that came up in the aftermath of a summer of joy, of Champions League victory, and the fans never feeling closer to the club than in recent history. There's so much goodwill around, and then this pops up and you're like, right, actually, there is a corporate element to Liverpool Football Club, and it's not the best. I just think they're clearly not going to just withdraw this, are they? So, and it's terrible. I don't really know what... in this situation, the only thing you can do is hope that organisations like SOS is just keep putting pressure on, because at some point they'll have to buckle on it, because it's just not feasible that the end point is that they get this trademark successfully through.
It's only in the context of Liverpool, of the football club, and it's worth remembering that. But it's a really good example of something that just is a bad taste thing, Paul. I can completely understand Liverpool looking at the amount of jar gear that wasn't done by what we can call the local independents at the time of the final. I can completely understand the point of view on it, but there is the sort of it is the bad taste element, and as I say, because there wasn't consultation in advance, but then they've attempted to do consultation on the fly afterwards, after the news breaks. That sort of stuff doesn't go well as well. Before you get into the principle of it, the way in which it's been handled is one of your wider concerns.
Yeah, I think it's something we've been doing well with as well. So that's where I suppose that's where there's a shame around it for me. I sort of understand the club's position on wanting to crack down on counterfeit stuff. It's the counterfeit stuff that I don't mind, as long as it doesn't creep in to the elements of getting embroiled with discussions with people like Hatscarf and the badge over the word Liverpool. Then it goes too far for me. So there needs to be some red lines drawn, and for them just to be a little bit clearer. The club have got to protect their brand. They're a big business. They're a multi-million pound business. I go to Turkey most years, and you'll see thousands of fake Liverpool shirts.
See thousands of fake Madrid shirts.
Yeah,
see thousands of
and I think
fake
they're all
Barcelona
dealing
shirts.
with it,
Yeah.
and this is it. And I think the issue for Liverpool is that they're not called Aston Villa or Crystal Palace. One of these, they're named after a city,
a world-renowned city.
A world-renowned city, famous for more things than Liverpool Football Club. Famous for the Beatles. Famous for a lot of other things. So the club have got to be careful, because I think we've been good at improving our perception amongst our own fans as much as anything. I don't get the blanket. You can't do this. I think the club have got to say, well, this is what, and it's got to be true. This is what we're going for, and maybe you've got to make some exemptions or what. It's just got to be clearer.
There is a problem with exemptions, though, isn't there? And that exemptions can be then changed further down the line. And this is always the issue. The issue is you bring something like this in, and it might be that you can say, well, these people are sound, but what about the next ownership? Or what about the next CEO?
Well, that's the problem, and this is why it's got to be clear.
You've got a legal thing set in place.
It's got to be clear. So the club can only use it in limited scenarios. Is what I'm suggesting. It's not that John Henry sells the club to a sheikh or something, and then he all of a sudden doesn't quite like Hatscarf and the badge or the Anfield wrap or the people who make merchandise to do with Liverpool Football Club. That's my concern, I suppose. And sorry, Neil, just the other thing is, I haven't seen anything with a liver bird on for a long time that hasn't been made by the club, and that was meant to be something that wasn't going to be made a big deal of.